We just had a couple of days in Switzerland, the official launch of the album, the new album. Before that, we were actually working on the album.
Right. Now, of course, this new album, which is called The House of Blue Light, is released in the new year. What can you tell me about the record, Ian? When was it recorded?
We started it in March last year and worked through the summer.
Where were you recording the album?
In Vermont.
Vermont.
Yeah, basically the same town we did the last one in. Different situation. We found an old theatre which was slowly rotting and falling to bits, so we cleaned it up a bit and used that. And we finished it in October in Munich, and it takes 3 or 4 months for
to come out
to get all their stuff.
Now you're busy doing the promotion. Tell me, the Perfect Perfect Strangers.
Perfect Rangers.
The Perfect Street Rangers.
That would have been a better title, wouldn't it?
A Lone Stranger.
Perfect Strangers, which came out nearly a year and a half ago now, was your first album together for over 10 years. Did you find, having crossed that hurdle of actually getting the first album out, was there less pressure on you this time to actually come up with a masterpiece, would you say?
I think well, there was a lot of pressure to come up with something good the last time, but I've always maintained that this album, the second album, is going to be a bit tougher to make, and the second tour, because I think the reunion had such a thing going for it. Everyone was curious to see, you know,
everybody's been talking about it since you broke up, and nobody stopped.
But I think we cared more about this album. I think the last one was done fairly quickly. This one, we put a lot more work into it. I think it shows.
All right, all right. Well, let's go back a little bit in time now. Let's have a look at some Deep Purple. This is Perfect Strangers. Deep Purple and Perfect Strangers. Now, I'm lucky enough to have with me in the studio today Ian Paice and Roger Glover. Now, tell me, chaps, this new album, which we've already mentioned will be coming out in the new year, once that actually hits the shops, presumably you'll be off again on one of these mega-length world tours.
Presumably, you're right.
What is it, I mean, after so many years of doing X amount of tours, is it a nightmare when you finally get the date sheet and it's like 30 pages long, or is it something you still really enjoy?
Well, it's for Deep Purple, it's necessary, because we're a working band. I think going in studios and making records has always been somewhat of a compromise. I mean, we enjoy that, but it's nothing compared to going out on stage and playing. That's the ultimate enjoyment.
But ideally, if you could break it down, would you do really just maybe 30 or 50 gigs a year as opposed to 200 and 300?
The hard thing is getting ready to do a tour. As soon as you're away on the first plane, going to do the first date, you're back in the routine, and it really doesn't matter how long it's for, because you are into that routine immediately.
Okay.
Mind you, at the end of the tour, we usually basket cases.
Hey.
Now, I notice, looking at some of your dates, that you're doing 3 in Britain. I think 2 at the Wembley and 1 at the NEC.
Well, I think it's going to be more than that.
I think it'll be...
Aha! Well, this is what I wanted to pin you down on, because, as I'm sure you're aware, you've been criticised fairly heavily in this country for not doing more gigs. People say you only did Nebworth when the last album came out. It's your home country, etc., etc. Why are you only doing, at the moment anyway, 3 gigs?
It's actually a bit of a sore point within the band, because...
some do and some don't.
It's very difficult. We've been saying that now we're much more in charge of our own destinies this time round than last time round, and yet we're still finding that agents and managers and record companies all together seem to give us orders that say, well, you can only do this and this and this because you haven't got time. We would like to do a lot more stuff in England. In fact, we've been talking about it the last week. At the moment, the time is really tight. We'd like to put in, probably after the gigs that we're doing, I would think there's a very good possibility we'll do a few unannounced gigs on a smaller level. That's what we'd like to do. When it will be, I don't know, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be this year.
I think there'll be more than 3 anyway.
All right.
I think that, you know, they may be at the same venues, but I think there'll be more than 3.
All right, well, I think we're going to hold you to that. Now, let's have a look at a bit more Deep Purple music now. This is Knocking at Your Back Door with me. Now, chaps, I noticed, not on that video, but the first one, you both winced just a little bit as it came up. And the last time I spoke to Ritchie Blackmore, he told me he personally hated doing videos. Now, what are your feelings? I mean, where do you stand with this video, Lars?
Actually, I didn't wince because of the Perfect Strangers video. I thought that was a good one, because it was natural.
Right.
The thing that makes me wince is when you have to act unnaturally, which is something we try not to do.
Yes.
Now, videos are a kind of necessary evil that you have to put up with, and we've sort of made decisions that we're not going to do any videos. That's it. We're musicians. We're just going to play and.
So we're doing one next week.
And that's what we're doing,
right,
yeah.
right. Now so there is actually going to be.
Yeah. I think you just have to be careful how you do them, because you can complete Wally. You know, you get it so wrong. So you've always got to find a new slant, or you've got to stick to a straight concert thing. You know.
Sure. Okay. Now, when let me ask you something. When most of the fans that write into this show and write into magazines and so forth talk about the origins of heavy metal and hard rock, they generally seem to mention Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, Deep Purple. Now, as musicians who've obviously influenced so many of the newer hard rock acts, is there anybody around right now or that's emerged over the last few years that you would personally give the thumbs up to? Say, yes, that is a good band?
It's a favourite question, and I get asked this a lot.
I'm sure you do.
There's no real band that I particularly like at the moment. The new wave of hard rock bands or heavy metal bands, I don't see a lot in.
You don't want to try. You don't want to make it negative, but it's very hard to be positive about it. And it's a bit confusing.
It seems to be one-dimensional. You know, when we were growing up, the things that influenced us were a huge spectrum of music, from gospel through soul, through brass bands, through pop and classical, everything. I don't see a lot of that influence coming through to younger bands. It seems...
Seems they only go back so far.
If they got their
yeah, but they're only
start
taken part of it.
Our era, you know, it's sort of from diversification. That's a good word, isn't it? Diversification. It's gone very narrow. You know, and they've just been listening to people like Sabbath and Purple and Zeppelin.
And nothing
and
else.
It's got watered down somehow.
Yeah. Okay, now look, before I let
I like the Police.
You like the Police?
Well,
Heavily
I think that's the only
They're
band.
waiting for you outside, actually.
Only band in the last 10 years. I thought that was really.
But then, you know, they're not exactly what you could call new, because they were musicians that had been around for a very long time, weren't they?
Yeah, well, they did marry two kind of seemingly disparate kinds of music together.
And make something of it.
Sort of punk and reggae came out of that era.
All right, now look, before I let you go, you are back together. We all know that. You've been back together now for over 2 years. How do you see yourselves? Is Deep Purple going to go on and on, or will you at some stage again diversify into solo projects?
At the moment, the plan is to go on and on. I mean, so I don't think that will stop anybody doing solo projects. But I don't think we'll ever make the decision to say, that's it, we're finished. Because, you know, it's like the old thing, never say never.
Right.
And now we found ourselves again. You know, it's so good that there's no reason to stop.
We're having fun, that's the point, you know.
All right, well, on those words, I'll leave it. Thank you very much, Roger Glover, for coming in. And
Thanks for coming, and we'll see you next time.
All right, let's get back to a little bit more music now. This is Judas Priest and Parental Guidance.